I mean, it's, when you have a society where everybody's redistributing the wealth everywhere, you don't have that opportunity. The government makes that decision for you. And if that's a society that you want, that can be provided. It's being provided in North Korea currently. And it's fantastic. With the exception of Kim Jong-il and a bunch of his friends, everybody makes the same amount of money.
Zero.
And pretty much zero. But you know what? You get a free, whatever the delicacy in North Korea is. Dog or dog baked
Cat.
with dirt. And you are able to eat that free government thing, and you get free government water, and you get free government electricity when it works, and you get free government water when it comes out of the pipes, and you get a gigantic hotel built in the middle of your city that doesn't do anything. And that's communism for you. If you want that, we can provide it. I thought one of the interesting things, Pat, in that top 20 clips from socialist advisors from the Blaze today, was one I had never heard before. I think it looked like Howard Dean, where he's saying the argument isn't socialism or capitalism anymore.
Yeah, it's both, right?
The argument is we're going to have both, and what proportion do we give to each group? Yeah. And, I mean, as much as it's, you're sitting out here and you're saying that I can't believe we have a guy who's the president of the head of the DNC and almost a presidential candidate, saying that stuff. He's right, isn't he? That is where we are in society right now.
Where we are.
We have some capitalism. We have some socialism. They want to push it to 80% socialism. The other side, Republicans say we want it to be 40% socialism. And let's have a crazy debate about those two numbers. When in reality, that's not the debate we should be having.
And the other amazing soundbite in that was some congressman in either West Virginia or Virginia, I think. And he was talking about this simplistic notion that wealthy people should be able to keep what they earn. What? What?
How simplistic.
I mean, are you kidding me? How is that not the notion of everybody on Earth? How is it not that you get to keep what you earn? And then if you want to, you share with others. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to say these things. But Americans are the most generous people in the history of this planet, and it's not even close. You can take all the other countries on Earth combined, they don't give what we give. I mean, okay, well, if you combine every other nation on Earth, you probably could get to our number. But it is not even close. I mean, we give 10 and 15 times what other supposedly generous nations give.
I wonder what that number is.
Because
we give at least double of every than any other country percentage-wise.
Yes.
At least double.
At least.
And it could be more than that. I don't know.
It's usually triple.
And of course, it would be much more than poorer countries. I mean, we're talking about countries like in Europe, we give double, or like in the case of France, I think it's like 8 times as much. But we also have what 20? What is it? We're 20% of the world economic activity.
Yeah.
I wonder what that number is, us versus the rest of the world combined. It's probably not as far off as you'd think.
It's probably not. It's probably not. We gave $300 billion plus last year in a recession. It was the third year that Americans gave more than $300 billion in a year. That is 10 times the aid the government doles out. 10 times. Private individuals and corporations gave out 10 times the amount of charity that the U.S. government gives out in foreign aid. I mean, so where does this notion come from, to use an Obama word, that it's the government that's so generous? They're not. They're not.
No.
Where is this notion that the Democrats are generous? They're not. Look at their income tax returns. If you're telling me that when it's forced out of your pocket, that's called generosity or charity, you're an idiot. You have to do it.
It's really interesting because it comes down to one specific difference, which is I think conservatives are people who look at capitalism as sort of a dynamic force that eventually solves almost all of our problems in a free
economically.
Market, economically.
Yeah.
And I think most other issues, but sometimes it takes longer. You know what I mean? I think, capitalism solves a lot of things, but at times it takes longer than it does to solve from government. And I put solve in quotation marks because of the fact that they don't actually solve it. And I think it has a lot to do with people getting into the idea that they are all-knowing. Capitalism admits our lack of ability to predict everything. Capitalism admits that we're people that make mistakes, and that where government doesn't. And like when you have a big issue, like for example, we talked about this briefly last week with the crack law and the cocaine law, and how there's a huge disparity in the sentencing. Well, that law came out of a reaction of Len Bias dying. Len Bias died, huge story. We all said, hey, we better come up with a way of dealing with this. And we picked something that the government said at the time was the most brilliant thing, and it was completely wrong. And that's the government assumes that the current right now sort of philosophy is the right one, and we better act on it. So like when we say, there's this huge business that goes, oh no, Glenn's behind you. He's stalking you.
I just lost my secret plans on something.
What?
You've lost your secret.
Plans. I've lost them.
I mean, this is a
Secret plans.
I
mean-
can't talk about it.
He's lost his secret plans. Well, the bottom line is, capitalism sometimes acts slower, and the world hates watching that slow action sometimes. Sometimes it does take longer to have good things happen out of capitalism than seem like you could get out of government. But government acts immediately and creates more problems down the road, where capitalism finds its way to the solution. It takes time sometimes. People don't like that, like with the economy, with the recession. If we would have backed off, we would have bounced back already. That's what happened in the 80s, and that's what happened in the 20s. The early 20s.
20s are such a great example that
Yeah.
nobody but us ever talks about.
Ever.
I haven't even heard other conservative talk shows talk about it. The 20s are an unbelievable example
Roaring
of the
20s.
free market system, and there was a reason they called it roaring. Because we were roaring economically. We were on fire.
Yeah, it's weird, and that's a great point, because that is seen today as a negative.
It is.
The roaring
It is.
was a negative.
Yeah.
The same people who will sit here and praise the dot-com boom because it backs Bill Clinton's economic numbers. It helps his presidency out. But, I mean, the bottom line is when you have innovation, when you get out of people's way, you get positive things out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes it doesn't feel great. Sometimes it's a little slow. Sometimes it doesn't move as fast as you want. But, I mean, it's like love, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Sometimes when you start the relationship out, it doesn't move the way you want it to.
Really?
Sometimes, you try to court your gal, and, it doesn't move. That doesn't mean you start yelling at her and say, you will be with me! You will be with me! And you lock her in your basement, and you lower down a pail to her
No, that doesn't
to
work.
put the lotion on your skin.
I tried that.
That
And
is something that's not
No.
a great pickup line.
It's not.
And it doesn't work very well. The bottom line is she runs away. And
Eventually.
and then eventually you, I
she
think,
gets a hold of a cell phone. Or
a cell phone, and then you,
and then calls for help, and then the police show up, and it's an ugly scene. I don't want to get into it,
right.
but it just doesn't work very well.
No, you have to court it.
Doesn't
And
work
sometimes it doesn't work out right away. But
Yeah.
eventually you
Eventually.
find that one.
That true
That's
love.
that true someone.
Exactly right.
And you don't have to lower a pail into a hole to get her.
No. So, in other words, the free market system works. And
Right.
despite the fact that everybody is, it seems like everybody right now on the left is saying it doesn't. It doesn't work. It brought the world out of the sewer.
Out of
I
the
mean,
dark ages.
People were dumping poop out of their windows. That's why, they were peeing in buckets and dropping them out the window before capitalism.
Mm-hmm. And that was the great environmental crisis of the day, Pat.
Yeah,
It
well,
was.
It's not a good, healthy thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So,
I just, luckily,
mean,
you can always predict what the great environmental issue of the day will be in 100 years.
yeah.
Because those people
It'll be
back
the same
then.
thing because they're going to go back to that.
Yeah.
What
back
they
to
want to
poop in the
do
windows.
is destroy free market. So once again, we won't be talking about CO2 emissions. We'll be talking about poop running through the streets of our villages.
If I'm given a choice, Pat, between the poop running through my village and some CO2,
little CO2
going in there,
elevation.
I'm going to go
375 parts per million. You're going.
I go 375.
Poop?
No,
No, are you?
375
Are you
parts
really?
per
That
million.
surprises me.
0 parts per million
I
poop.
was
Oh,
really
that's what I'm
kind of
gonna go-
surprised
yeah,
there.
I'm going to go.
Huh.
I'm trying to
You
lower
like
the
poop to kind of go
amount.
down the toilet and into
I
the
love
sewer
that.
system
I
and
actually
into
really-
a plant that kind of,
Does its thing over
takes
there.
care of it in whatever way they take care of it.
Right. I like that
Yeah.
better than it being in the streets.
Well, that's because you're a hater.